Well, good afternoon, committee members. I'm Fred Bradshaw, the chair. This is the CCA meeting. We also have with us Hugh Nerline, Lisa Lampert, and Kathy Sproul is substituting in for Warren McCall. We have a document to table, CCA 88-28, SAS Power Corporation, responses to questions raised at the September 17, 2019 meeting. I would also like to advise the committee that pursuant to Rule 145(3), Chapters 11 and 23 of the Provincial Auditor of Saskatchewan 2020 Report, Volume 1, were committed to the committee. This afternoon, the committee will be considering the estimates and supplementary estimates for the Ministry of Central Services. We will now begin with Vote 13, Central Services, Central Management and Services, Subvote CS01. Minister Shuttledayoff, please introduce your officials and make your opening comments. And officials, when you speak, could you please state your name for Hansard? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's indeed a pleasure to be here this afternoon to discuss the Ministry of Central Services budget for 2020-2021. With me this afternoon are a number of officials from the Ministry of Central Services. To my left is Mike Carr, and Mike Carr is the Deputy Minister. Bonnie Schmidt, Assistant Deputy Minister, Information Technology Division and Chief Information Officer is with us. Bonnie, give us a wave. Nancy Cherney is the Assistant Deputy Minister, Property Management Division. And Troy Smith, Assistant Deputy Minister, Corporate and Commercial Services Division. And Michael Kondrachuk, Chief of Staff in my office as well. Before I turn to the specifics of the 2021 budget, I'd like to take a moment to touch on Central Services mandate. As a central agency providing coordination and delivery of diverse programs and services to government, ministries, and agencies, its core purpose is to deliver valued services and expertise to enable partners to fulfill their commitment to those they serve, Saskatchewan people. This purpose has been even more clear and important since the advent of COVID-19 in recent months. As we navigate this unprecedented situation, Central Services quickly adapted its service delivery to adjust to new workplace realities and support the continuity of government services. This has included supporting government employees to effectively work remotely, ensuring the Saskatchewan.ca website supported a significant increase in traffic as Saskatchewan people sought information about COVID-19, and ensuring government workspaces are safe environments maintained to the highest standards and adjusted to support the safe physical distancing for employees and customers. Central Services has risen to the challenge, finding innovative solutions to meet the evolving needs of ministry clients. This in turn has ensured critical government services have remained available and accessible to Saskatchewan people throughout the challenging circumstances that COVID-19 has presented. As we look ahead, the Central Services budget remains focused on meeting the needs of ministry clients to ultimately benefit the people of our province, as assessing the cost onto client ministries. This year, those pressures are being addressed by correctly identifying ongoing costs and recoveries in its budget. This includes alignment of actual expenses related to air ambulance services and Wascana Centre maintenance staff, and operations that were transferred from the Provincial Capital Commission. A $1.915 million increase to address rising costs in government buildings as a result of the federal carbon tax. A $210,000 increase for Central Vehicle Agency licensing costs, and a $2.551 million increase to support actual enterprise IT costs due to inflation and incremental investments in IT security. Central Services is always working hard to strengthen IT security. To work with ministries is ongoing to advance the IT security plan to remove unsupported technology, update or decommission old business applications, and better secure online services to reduce the risk of outages. Due to the sensitivity of citizen and business information that our government gathers and manages, we have a vital role to protect that information. IT security is always on alert as cyber criminals become more highly skilled and use more sophisticated techniques in their efforts to breach our systems. This risk cannot go unchecked. An additional incremental investment of $3.2 million in IT security is budgeted to support a dedicated project that will continue through March of 2021 to modernize systems and enhance government's overall cybersecurity posture. This work will result in greater certainty about the security of the Government of Saskatchewan IT infrastructure and will be better able to detect intrusions and respond immediately to any threats. It will also position government to continue to evolve online service delivery with confidence. The digital strategy team will continue its focus on developing the single online access point to all government services on the Saskatchewan.ca website. It will also continue to build a trusted digital identification that ensures identity verification is done immediately online and from any location, without the need for additional document transfer that creates a security risk. The last area of additional investment I will outline is the Property Management Division. Central Services manages 690 leased or owned properties in 151 communities across our province, with a replacement value of $4.69 billion for the owned buildings. The ministry manages that space efficiently and cost-effectively and works with client ministries to understand their needs in order to provide them with the best options to meet those needs. Along with space planning, there are a number of building projects underway at any given time to ensure the safe and efficient operation of facilities. On an annual basis, $28.643 million is invested in major projects to maintain buildings. Projects are prioritized to ensure maintenance occurs to extend the life and value of the asset. A $3.8 million increase in appropriated maintenance is budgeted for this year. This funding will allow the ministry to prepare for a number of buildings to be demolished at the old Saskatchewan Hospital North Battleford site and address upgrades required at the Saskatchewan Polytechnic Moose Jaw campus. Before I close, it's also important to note that Central Services provides funding for the Provincial Archives of Saskatchewan in the form of a grant. This grant amount is unchanged at $4.363 million. Central Services is also supporting the relocation and consolidation of all archives offices into a new location at 2440 Broad Street in Regina. The new space will have essential security and environmental measures in place to protect and ensure these historic records for the future. The entire project is expected to be completed by the end of August 2020. In closing, the 2020-21 Ministry of Central Services budget outlines its commitment to creating value for its ministry and agency clients, ultimately for the benefit of Saskatchewan people. I and my officials from Central Services will now, Mr. Chair, be pleased to answer any questions that you or any committee members may have. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you, Minister. Are there any questions? Ms. Sproul?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for those opening comments. I look forward to the discussion this afternoon. Just right off the top, I wanted to clarify something regarding e-health, and I'm just wondering, for example, you have IT allocated to external clients. I'm just wondering, does the Ministry of Central Services Information Technology section provide any services at all to e-health?
Can't guarantee that all will be that way, but no, eHealth does not, or Central Services do not provide eHealth with any. They're an independent agency.
Thanks. Just on that, is what external clients do you allocate IT to?
Thanks very much. We have quite a number, and it's a list that we're working to obtain for you here, but I can tell you that the Provincial Capital Commission, for example, is one, the Public Safety Agency, Sask Builds, the Trade and Certification Commission.
We've also got the Sask Bill, Sask Housing Authority.
In addition to what I've just mentioned, we have Sask Housing, we have Legal Aid, Sask Municipal Board as others, and again, we'll undertake to have a complete list for you before we leave today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Just starting on the actual estimates themselves then, it looks like between March of 2020, when the estimates were shared with the public, and then this particular version of the estimates in June, there was a $2 million increase in your proposed budget. I'm just wondering why that change was made.
Yes, indeed, the member is correct. There's a $2 million increase between the two budgeted amounts. The increase is for infrastructure projects. Certainly, one of the major projects that we're looking at is the Sask Poly project in Moose Jaw that I mentioned in my notes at the outset, and some additional repairs and to Cooper Place here in Regina. So in response to COVID, as the member knows, we have a very, very aggressive infrastructure program that we're wanting to implement, and Central Services is part of that.
Can you walk the committee through the process whereby those two facilities were chosen for this infrastructure stimulus funding, and maybe describe a little bit what those projects are?
To outline for the member the process, Central Services comes up with a priority list, and that list is submitted to Sask Builds and adjudicated against projects from other ministries, and then a list is forwarded to Cabinet for their discussion and undertaking, and then a final list is chosen. So as far as the projects themselves that we're looking at the Palliser campus in Moose Jaw, the mezzanine was not up to code and has to be replaced. So our project is to actually remove the existing infrastructure that's there in the existing structure, and make it ready for improvements that'll take place, and those will be budgeted by Advanced Education. At Cooper Place here in Regina, the funding and the project is regarding the computer controls of the building, and to ensure that they're at leading edge and optimal capacity. We're wanting to make improvements there, which will result in overall cost decreases when it comes to utility usage and things like that.
When you say Sask Builds adjudicated the lists that were presented to them, and I know you sit at the table on Sask Builds here on the board, is there a set of metrics that they would use to determine the merit of each of these applications?
Members' information, indeed, Sask Builds does have a series of metrics and quite a elaborate evaluation criteria that they use when they compare projects from each of the ministries. They want to make sure that the projects are aligned with the priorities of the overall government, and also, which is very important, that they're not taxing one specific industry, for example. So, you wouldn't want to be doing roofs, for example, in all ministries and not have the ability to meet those needs by the private sector in the province. So Sask Builds plays a coordinating role and ensures that ministries get the best value and the best address of the priorities of government as well.
Thank you. Would Cabinet make any changes then to those recommendations?
Yes, Cabinet is free to make changes to them, or if there's any errors or omissions, Cabinet members are able to bring those forward.
So were there any changes made to the projects that your ministry put forward?
Well, I don't think I'm in a place to speak about what happens at the Cabinet table here, but we were pleased with the two projects that did receive approval. And again, we had a list that was submitted, and we feel it was fairly adjudicated.
You mentioned the project at the Palliser campus was for a mezzanine that was not up to code. It seems to me that would have been part of your ordinary projects that you would do if something's not up to code. It needs to be fixed. What was it that made this a COVID project? Because it seems to me the infrastructure spending for COVID should be looked at as over and above things that aren't up to code. I thought it was expected to be a stimulus projects. So why would a mezzanine not up to code be considered a stimulus project?
So for the members' information, this project was on our list and is to be addressed, but it was indicated that it was a priority for advanced education, and our portion of it is initially the replacement of the area, and then advanced education is the one that will complete the project. So what indeed did happen, because the priority that advanced ed put on it, it moved it up in our project listing, and it was able to go, and that's a priority as well for us as far as we look to the recovery. So it's a project that was needed. It received a bump up in our list, and it's a priority as addressed by advanced education.
So I just want to make sure I understand this. Your priority list is made in terms of what other ministries are identifying as their priorities. Is that generally how you come forward with your priority list?
The chair is keeping you busy while I'm commiserating with my officials. For the committee's information, there's sort of two mechanisms that are used as far as our priority approach goes, and one is the priorities of our clients. So we have a client list, and the second is our own priorities, as we talked about those 690 buildings that we own or lease. So it's a balance of priorities there. And what happened in this case at Palliser was that it was on our list as a base project that needed to be done, but it was also identified for educational purposes as a priority by by advanced education. So it met both of those criteria. Therefore, it was very quickly moved to the top as a priority item, and it was ready to go as well.
Thank you. In terms of some of the other projects, you've got $7.2 million allocated for the new, or for the Saskatoon Provincial Correctional Centre. Now, I think on May 29th, there was an announcement of $4.6 million to replace the urban camp adjacent to the correctional center. And then on June 17th, just last week, I believe, there was an announcement of a construction of a $120 million remand center. Can you share with the committee where that $7.2 million allocation is being placed, and then, which of course is new since March, and is the urban camp project still proceeding?
So for the committee's information, the urban camp is going ahead, and the $7.2 million for the Sask Provincial Correctional Centre is a series of projects that include the expansion of the facility, and for example, upgrades to detention doors, for example, $1.7 million, and everything to small masonry repair in the gym for $23,000. So there's a list of smaller projects that encompass the 7.2, and then the $120 million for the remand center is part of the stimulus as well, and it's an entire project on its own.
Will Central Services be involved in that project of the remand center?
Yes, indeed, we will be a partner, and we will be overseeing, and we will continue to operate that as one of our facilities.
Just going back to the repairs that you described at the correctional center for $7.2 million. Once again, these weren't present in your estimates as of March, and now they're showing up in June. And it seems to me these would be, I find it hard to think of repairs as stimulus spending. So why is it that that these weren't in your original estimates in March? And what sort of priority are you giving on these repair projects if they can't make it unless there's stimulus spending?
Well, for the committee's information, I'm going to provide further detail and some clarification. The Saskatoon Provincial Correctional Centre, the $7.2 million is specifically for the remand center expansion. And then there's another $8.409 million that includes various projects that I had just mentioned. So I may have confused the issue here a little bit, but for the members' clarity, Saskatoon Provincial Correctional Centre, $7.2 million is the remand center expansion, and then those projects that I just mentioned, that comes from a different area for $8.4 million.
Yeah, I was going to get to that 8.4 million here in a bit, but so $120 million remand center, 7.2 million is coming from your estimates. Where is the remaining 112.8 million located in the estimates?
All right, so the question was regarding the the additional funds between the 7.2 million and the 120 million, which would amount to 112.8. That will come through the Ministry of Central Services, but in future years. So this year, the 7.2 will be allocated to undertake the design of the structure. Then we will come to Cabinet for the additional funding to go ahead and actually award the contract and build the facility.
Thank you. And the urban camp is pegged at 4.6 million. Where are those funds in the estimates?
So for the committee's information, and much like the earlier question, the urban camp, $140,000 is allocated for the design, and then the remainder of the funds will come in the next year as design is completed and additional funding is sought for the building of the facility.
Those design costs are reflected in which line item?
They are a portion of the $8.2 million here that is identified, and it's a line item within that.
The 8.409 million?
Yes.
Okay. So back in March, in terms of the other, the 5.514, was the urban camp part of that at that point, or is that additional spending since March? Perhaps I could add to that, Mr. Minister. I'm just wondering, of the other itself, it's up by approximately $3 million. So how many of the, how much of that money, sorry, I have to phrase this, of the increase since March, what projects are reflected in the $3 million increase?
right, for the committee's information, majority of the $3 million is for correctional center upgrades. And I've got a few examples here. The Saskatoon Cultural Lodge, the Prince Albert Cultural Lodge in Regina. There's kitchen facility and bathroom renovations. And there's a series of other projects as well.
I think my question was what changes were made from March until June in terms of that list, and so is that the list you just gave me, is that the 3 million additional that was added to the estimates? Or is
Yes,
that's
was
just the 3 million?
Specifically
Okay,
answers
thank
that
you.
question. Yeah.
Okay. Just time's going very quickly, and I just so you know, Mr. Minister, I have no objection if your deputy wants to answer some of these questions, because seems to be a lot of time lost in translation. So if you could give the committee a report on the sale of the Valley View lands, how much of that land has been sold, how much they were sold for, and then how much of the land remains to be sold, and what's the plan for that?
All right, thanks very much. I appreciate the members' comments, and we'll try to be as expeditious as we can with the answers. All of the parcels on offer with the Valley View Centre have received valid and acceptable bid proposals. The purchase of one of the small parcels of land was fully executed on January 31st, 2020. The Waccamaw Valley Authority will be acquiring approximately 30 acres of land that they have been using for walking trails for several years. This parcel includes the ecologically sensitive lands, and detailed sales agreements are being finalized with the remaining purchasers, and sale transactions are anticipated to be finalized and completed by the end of August. All 5 parcels of land were posted to RFP in November of 2019, closed in December of 2019, and again, from this process, 1 has been sold, 4 remaining as they are conditionally sold, with all transactions targeted for finalization at the end of August.
Thank you very much. So the one that has been completed, is that the Waccamaw Valley parcel, or is that a different parcel?
That's a smaller, different parcel.
All right, I wanted to get that on the record. Just moving on, I'm going to probably come back to subvote 03, but I just wanted to ask a few questions about the Sask Hospital North Battleford, and just in terms of some of the issues that are in place there at this point in time. Can the minister provide the committee with the projected date for the rehabilitation wing to be fully functional?
All right, we're just trying to clarify some of the terminology there. If the admittance wing is where your question is, it's been fully operational since last fall. And there are 3 wings left to do, but work is proceeding ahead of schedule. And the indication is that all will be completed by the end of September.
What are those 3 wings? What do you call them?
All right, well, the West Prairie View Wing, West Prairie View A Wing was completed in early January 2020. This includes a 24-bed central admission unit, which is operational. The East Prairie View A Wing was remediated and returned to use on January 12th, 2020. Mid-March 2020 saw completion of repairs to 2 more wings, and the West Prairie Central View C and the East Riverview B were cleared for operational use. Rooms to be located in the West Prairie View D and East Prairie A wings have also been completed, and those units were back in service in May of 2020. Currently, work is underway in rooms in East Prairie View B and West River B wings, and both are expected to be completed later this summer. Following completion of those areas, and an estimated 10 to 12 rooms will remain to be remediated in West Prairie View B, West Prairie View A, and West View C wings. That work is scheduled to be as quick as possible, so all remediation surfaces can be wrapped up by the end of September.
Thank you. Do you have a cost for a total cost for this remediation work?
For committee's information, we do not have an estimate of the cost. That cost is being borne by the APP, so it will be totally their responsibility, and we don't have a outline of what that total cost is.
Are you aware of any penalties that have resulted from all the deficiencies in this facility and all the remediation that has had to happen? If there are penalties, if you could tell us how much the penalties were and for what they were assessed on.
For the committee's information, there are about in excess of $4 million in penalties right now that we know of. There's in excess of $1 million, $1,048,000 for deficiencies, and approximately $3.3 million to compensate for delays. And again, there will be an assessment of additional penalties calculated when everything is completed and we have a chance to look at the entire project and identify areas where penalty clauses are activated. So it is $4.3 million right now, and with additional penalties that we would anticipate.
Thank you. What was the total cost of the roof rehabilitation?
So for the committee's information, the answer is similar to a previous answer given in that we don't monitor or know what the exact costs are, because again, that is borne by the partnership and the lead partner in this way. And again, you know, for committee members' reference, this is one of the advantages of the P3 is that if it's not up to our standards, we can ensure that the work is being done and that cost is borne by the company and the partnership internally.
I guess my next question is why then, given what happened with the exterior of the building, did you not change course for the roof and ask them to choose a different product?
So for committee's information, when the envelope was being redone, the building was not in the possession of Central Services or the government of Saskatchewan. You know, they have an obligation to ensure that delivery of the building that meets standards. And at that time, the roof did not appear to need repair, but it was determined at a later time that the roof indeed needed to be repaired as well. So it's a position that you know, we did not have the building. It was a decision made by the folks of the partnership, and again, it's their job to make those decisions, and it's their job to give us a building that meets our standards, and they did not, so they have to redo it.
As you know, there's been difficulties getting the building up to speed for use by the patients who really need to have access to that building. So are you suggesting that there's absolutely no cost to the people of Saskatchewan by having all these delays caused by the faulty construction?
We've made it a priority that the impact on the patients are as minimal as possible. As I've indicated, the intake area has been opened for quite some time, and you know, there is availability there. So there are some hurdles that we are addressing, but you know, we feel that the services offered today are certainly well in advance of the other facility that was there for over 100 years. This is a building that was long overdue. It's having a few hiccups, but we are, you know, our goal is to ensure that these remediations and restitutions are done, and that we have a fully functioning, operational, state-of-the-art building as soon as possible.
I think that may be arguable whether the building as it currently sits is much better for the patients than the previous one, because there aren't enough patient beds. So for the patients that aren't able to be there, that may be an arguable point. In terms of concerns about the hospital roof, when did the SHA first raise concerns about the hospital roof?
Just to address the member's point, you know, certainly I had an opportunity to be there on opening day and to talk to many of the residents that, you know, now call the facility home, and they certainly gave me every indication. Yeah, well, we'll ensure that those that aren't there, that will be there in the future, hopefully have the same experience. The SHA let us know in May of 2019 regarding the deficiencies of the roof.
And when did the building open? Was it May?
March the 8th, I believe, of 2019.
March. Thank you.
All right, just to further complete the answer, we took possession on September 6th of 2018, and then the grand opening was on in early March of 2019.
I believe a company from Calgary, Concept Electric, was given the major electrical contract by the partnership. We've heard concerns about the electrical work and an issue that took place in the roof dance floor area where electrical wiring was mounted with inappropriate mounting materials and fell. Can you share any information that you may have on this incident? And our understanding is that it resulted in the employees of Concept being ordered off the site. And just to go on, since then, the Concept itself as a company has gone bankrupt, and it's in the news because hundreds of employees are unpaid. Were you aware of that?
So for the committee's information, we are not aware of the information that the member is bringing forward right now. We can't speculate on what may or may not have happened. If the member has that information, we'd certainly be interested in looking into it. You know, Concept Electrical may have been a subcontractor to Graham Construction, and again, as with anything else, if there has been something that we need to look into, we're happy to do that.
This may highlight the concern we've been raising about hiring Saskatchewan firms to get the work done here in Saskatchewan. Apparently, there was a gentleman who was in charge of the concept team at the hospital and is still there now as a facility manager for SNC Lavalin. Were you aware of that?
We have not been aware of that, and that's very, very specific information that that certainly I was not aware of. But what I do know is that 61% of the work that was done here was done by Saskatchewan companies, and every effort was made to ensure that Saskatchewan workers and Saskatchewan companies were the benefit of these contracts. Where it wasn't possible to engage or employ Saskatchewan companies, companies from other provinces were involved. But again, 61% is the number that I recall.
I'm sorry, 61% is the number of Saskatchewan workers? Is that, I was looking forward to my next question. I apologize.
That references companies, not workers.
When you refer to those companies, are these companies who have headquarters in Saskatchewan, or are they companies by definition that are registered in the corporate registry here, but would have headquarters outside of Saskatchewan?
There would be a variety of instances, but certainly our criteria has always been that they have a Saskatchewan presence, and if they operate an office here, or because of the contract to open up an office here, we see that as a very, very positive thing.
So let me get this right. If this is a company from Ontario or Alberta, but if they get a contract here and open an office here, they would be considered a Saskatchewan company for that purpose?
For the committee's information, we'd have to get the information exactly from SaskBuilds and what exactly constitutes a Saskatchewan company, but our belief is that it is a presence here in Saskatchewan, that they have workers on the ground in the province, and not necessarily having their head office here.
I had this discussion yesterday with the officials from SaskBuilds, and they weren't really able to confirm either what exactly a Saskatchewan company would be defined as. They weren't able to confirm that if they simply registered in the corporate registry in Saskatchewan, that they would be considered a Saskatchewan company, which is something any company from the rest of Canada can do. So I think the government may have a bit of a definitional issue here. When you are defining Saskatchewan companies, is a mailbox enough? when you say open an office for the purposes of the project, I think there's a lot more clarity that should be provided. So perhaps, I don't know if you can undertake to provide that definitional clarity. Certainly, SAS Builds is going to provide us with a list of the companies that they did procurement with last year. So that's something we want to check out as well. But I think it's really problematic when we have a definition as the one you gave, where they get the contract, they're from Alberta, and then open an office here, because I'm not sure that makes them a Saskatchewan company, especially in the sense of having the income stay in Saskatchewan, and the workers and the skills and the managerial skills and everything that goes with running a company staying here in the province. So I would appreciate if you could undertake to provide the committee with some more clarity in terms of that definition, and perhaps if you could provide us with a list of the companies that you have done contracts with, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. We don't want to give the member the runaround at all. And if there was information provided yesterday by Sask Builds, officials from Central Services will work with Sask Builds and provide you with that information. I do differ with the member a little bit, though. If through procurement we are able to entice a company to set up in Saskatchewan, I would hope that would be for the long term, and those employees would be Saskatchewan residents paying Saskatchewan taxes, and I think there is an advantage to doing just that. But ideally, of course, it would be an existing Saskatchewan company with all Saskatchewan workers that are able to compete and win these contracts. But Sask Builds has been doing a very, very good job to look at all aspects, from RFPs and how we tender, and ensuring that Saskatchewan companies have the availability to be successful in those RFPs.
Are you keeping track of any of these companies that move here in terms of whether they stay in Saskatchewan after the project?
Again, I'm sure Sask Builds would be happy to provide that information, and we will endeavor to provide that after consultation with them to you.
In terms of the remand center being a $120 million price tag, I know often there's a consideration as to whether that should be done by way of a P3. That's certainly something Sask Builds has indicated. Is your ministry looking at a possible P3 for the remand center?
For the committee's information, that has not been determined yet, and I think committee members will know that we're not philosophically tied to P3s. We believe that the P3 program provides some advantages, but again, every project is different. We will look at all available options, and as members know, even within a P3 category, there's different. There's design build, operate, and there's various functions within the P3 continuum. But at this time, that decision has not been made, and analysis is taking place right now.
Thank you. We'll look forward to that determination. Your ministry is spending $7.2 million on this. And in discussion with Sask Builds yesterday, it seems that their role has been established as a Treasurer Crown is to project manage most of the large construction projects in the province. So I'm just wondering if you can explain how this $7.2 million that you are spending on the project aligns with Sask Builds' role as basically the project manager. As you know, they have the responsibility through their mandate. So are you supplying project management to SAS Builds with that money? Or is there two separate teams that will be working on the project? Or what sort of relational aspects can you share with us about the Remand Center with Central Services' role and SAS Build's role, as far as you know?
For the committee's information, this is going to be an integrated team approach where SASC Builds and Corrections and Policing and Central Services will work together, where SASC Builds will be on the initial end of things, looking at the procurement, looking at the pre-planning, and then it'll be over to Central Services to manage the the bricks and mortar and the building and the design and the building of the actual facility itself. And that will all be done in consultation with the Corrections and Policing.
So to be clear, SAS Build's role is limited to the procurement, and Central Services' role is, in its essence, the construction of the facility.
Yes, that is correct for the members' information, committee's information. But again, SASC Builds will primarily be there for procurement, for pre-planning, which is the initial design project and the plan. And then once a contractor is hired, Central Services will take it from there and manage that portion of the bricks and mortar construction.
And is that the same process that was followed with the joint use schools or and the Swift Current Meadows long-term care facility and the North Battleford Hospital? Is that the same process?
So for the committee's information, no, this is a different process. The buildings that the member mentioned were a P3 in the more traditional sense. And, this is yet to be determined what it is going to be once the procurement is decided. But, we will be following this approach that I've outlined earlier where SASC Builds will be in charge of the initial procurement, and then it'll move once the contractor is hired to Central Services.
And would it be fair to say that's the same process then that would be followed for the other, as you've described it in your estimates, the 8.4 million for the other projects that are being managed at this point in time. So SAS Builds will do the procurement, they will sign the contract for the construction, and then you will take it over at that point.
All right, so for committee's information, this will be a joint process, and SAS Builds will work together with Central Services. SAS Builds will support and assist us in making sure that we get the right supplier, and that there's fairness in it. But I think the member mentioned about signing the contracts, and that will be done by Central Services.
I confess I'm still not fully clear on the roles between SAS Builds and Central Services. I suspect they're still evolving with the devolution of the procurement services moving from your ministry over to SAS Builds. And certainly this is a role that Central Services filled for years, many decades in fact. So I think the questions about the devolution of some of this to a Treasury Board Crown raises questions for the public. And certainly, is there a duplication of services? And I know that this is something I think we need to continue to explore as it evolves. But it's still a mystery to me why Treasury Board Crown had to be created to do the work that your ministry has done well in the past. So I guess there's no question there, so I apologize for that, Mr. Minister. You may have a comment, but I want to move on to Pine Grove Correctional Center now, if we could. I noticed in this year's budget, you are allocating $1.7 million for the Pine Grove Correctional Center. The only thing we've seen announcements for so far is new razor wire, and then I think there's some tenders on Sask Tender's website, a cultural building, paving the parking lot, and upgrading the doors and the detention hardware. These were all in the last fiscal year. So I'm just wondering if you could share with the committee this new allocation, what its purpose is, and what the project will be.
They said, Minister, it's on that paper that we gave you earlier, so I have to go look for the paper, and hopefully I didn't destroy it, but the paper's there, so, So we found the paper, and now we're getting more information.
most things I dislike, like our girls can do it and don't even think about it. Although they find when they're proofreading, like Monique's and Crown Prosecutor, she wants it, printed, and I cannot. I need to. I automatically highlight and write, and I can't do it on the. It doesn't go in my brain.
think well if I don't have a pen.
Exactly. It is just, and they actually say that even for university students, when they're even keyboarding their notes, they do not retain, studies show, nearly as good as when they handwrite their notes. And they don't, of course, handwrite their notes.
Have you ever been in a university class though?
Yes.
That's how you can hear is the keywords going.
But yeah, my girls can do it on the screen, and I just can't. It's print everything out, thank you, and I double-sided, and I try not to waste, but we've got an electronic footprint problem now that has replaced the paper, and we're recycling really good with the paper, and now we've got an electronic problem that is bigger than the paper problem.
In terms of all the old appliances or whatever?
Yeah, and just disposal, the digital footprint of, dealing with all of the discard. So we send it over. And, and all this, like this has actually ironically become better. Because of how they recycle and how they make it. Yeah, and we replant, so people go, oh, environmentally don't do it. Well, okay, talk to the Paper Association. They will clue you in on what actually is the problem now. And yes.
What is that? There's an association, we have exceptions here, the electronic waste management.
Yes, where they try to.
I've heard of a lot of those old clunky computers and TVs from the landfill.
I have a list, but I don't know if the writing's getting smaller or I'm just getting older, but they have an answer for us here. But the category it's called tenant improvements. So it would be initiated by corrections and policing on the improvements that they indeed want. And our information is similar to what the member in her question talked about as far as the cultural lodge, the wire. There's also improvements in the laundry area, door controls, intercom, security. So it would be a variety of tenant improvements initiated by what indeed is the tenant to us. So again, if a member wants an entire complete list, I'll undertake to get that for you.
I guess my question is 3 of those projects were tendered in the last fiscal year, 1920, and I'm just wondering if this 1.7 million is in addition to the projects that have already been tendered.
So this is a new commitment of resources, and this may be in the second year of a 2-year project or the second year of a 3-year project. But these are additional resources.
Yeah, because in the 1920 estimates, there was no allocation, and yet the tenders went out in the 1920 fiscal year. So I'm just kind of confused why you would be tendering when there was no allocation in the previous fiscal year. Do I have that right?
These information, we would receive information from our partner that they want to go ahead with procurement, with an RFP. We would undertake that they have the money to go ahead with it, and then it would be up to them to go to Treasury Board and ensure that they have the resources for the full spend. So that's why it may appear that way to the member, and how it comes to be, but again, the onus is on them to go to Treasury Board and find the resources for the full spend.
Okay.
If the member would indulge me, I just have some additional information that I've received, that a definition of a Saskatchewan company. Again, there's this comes from Sask Builds, I believe, and that the company be located, number one, be located in Saskatchewan. Number two, employs Saskatchewan people. Number three, pays Saskatchewan taxes. And number four, sources their supplies from Saskatchewan-based businesses upon capacity, quality, and availability. So that is the definition of a Saskatchewan company as presented by Sask Builds.
It's the definition of location, and when I ask the question, is location mean, are you registered in the corporate registry, or do you have a physical location? They weren't able to answer that, so that's the concern. Any company from Alberta can employ Saskatchewan people and source materials here, but I don't think that would make it a Saskatchewan company. So I think the location is the definitional issue that we have right now, and I'm glad your Chief of Staff was able to provide you with that information from Sask Builds, but that it was the discussion, is what does located mean? Okay.
Yeah, fair enough, and
So we're still working on it.
We'll go back to my original undertaking to provide you with that information with specific emphasis on the location.
Thank you. Okay, in terms of Pine Grove then, again, I just want to make sure I understand the roles of all the parties. So is Sask Builds doing the procurement for that, and then they'll arrange, at which point I'm not sure how you do the procurement without signing a contract, but you're saying you sign the contract once they procure the contractor? I mean, and so they would handle the choice of contractor, you will sign the contract, and then Sask Builds will procure all the materials as well? Or is that something that Central Services does? Just sort of maybe walk me through this one more time in terms of the Pine Grove. How will this, and I guess, of course, corrections is always at the table as well. So what is the flow between those three agencies?
So for the committee's information and to clarify, the work that Sask Builds does is as a facilitator. They make sure that we're following the right process, and they indeed are the experts as far as it comes to following that process and ensuring that procurement. And they obviously have a lens towards Saskatchewan companies and ensuring that we, in every indication, try to ensure that Saskatchewan companies are able to be or able to build and have the wherewithal, or able to apply and have the wherewithal to do it. In that instance, Central Services, we are the subject experts, and we will define, what exactly is needed, and we'll work with Sask Builds together. And, to the members' earlier comments, I think, sure, it's a work in progress, and there's improvements that are constantly being done by Sask Builds. But I think we have found that it is advantageous to have those experts in Sask Builds as facilitators to ensure that that procurement takes place, and then we fall in behind that as the subject experts to make sure that the project proceeds with the expertise that we provide.
So they're expert facilitators? That's what they bring to the table?
So yes, Sask Builds is, expert facilitators. They have expertise in project design, expertise in procurement, and they would take a project to market on our behalf. So that's the expertise that they do provide.
But obviously the procurement expertise came from Central Services because you moved all your staff last year from Central Services in procurement over to Sask Builds. So that's how they got the expertise, was from your ministry. I don't know. I just think it's creating silos. And what is Central Services' role? Why can't Sask Builds just deal directly with the client, which in this case would be corrections? Obviously, they have their expertise in terms of design as well. And you say you're subject experts, but I'm not really clear what subject you're expert in. Maybe you could share that with me.
You're right that a number of the individuals were moved over from Central Services to Sask Builds. Many of them had multiple tasks that they were undertaking in Central Services, and now are able to be experts in the area of procurement. So I think having those experts in one area where they all day long deal with different ministries and ensure that they are able to help ministries with that professionalism that they provide. So I believe that this is a good approach. It's working well. As a member indicated, I do sit on the board of Sask Builds, and I hear examples meeting after meeting of the success that they're having in this designed operation.
All right, I'm going to move on. Sask Polytechnic, looks like $4 million is going in this year out of $12 million. Looks like was the announcement on May 29th. And this was rolled into an announcement regarding upgrades at the Griffith Stadium at the U of S, and the U of R College of Kinesiology is getting a new roof. Would Central Services project manage the two projects at the universities?
For the committee's information, we have no role to play with the operation of these facilities on the university campuses. They have their own experts and their own expertise that they undertake to oversee these projects.
Thank you. Do you know when the tender will be issued for SAS Polytechnic? And is that being issued by SAS Builds?
All right, to answer the question, the RFP will be posted in the next little while. I understand it's very near the end of the process, and you know, Sask Builds will provide that information to Sask Tenders, and it should be underway shortly.
Thank you. So 12 million is the total cost, and it's 4 million this year, or is there other funds that will flow into this project?
We understand 4 million is earmarked for this year and the balance for next year.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to move on now to subvote 05, which is transportation and other services. If you could share with the committee how many new vehicles were purchased or were leased purchased in 1920, and how many are planned for lease or purchase in 2021, and what types of vehicles?
All right, we have a number of vehicles that are purchased. One Corvette for member Bradshaw, and you always got to get in good with the chair, but no, for those watching, that was a joke. No Corvettes have been purchased. What we have here is on 1920, we bought 250 vehicles, and 60% were trucks and 40% cars. And as has been our operations over the last number of years, we haven't leased any vehicles. So the member asked of what was bought and what was leased. So 250 were bought in 1920, and in 2021, again, we're going to be purchasing same ratio: 60% trucks, 40% cars, 250 vehicles.
All right, thank you. Of the new vehicles procured last year, how many were procured from outside of Saskatchewan?
For the committee's information, the way that vehicles are procured in Saskatchewan, it's a joint agreement with Alberta, British Columbia, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan. We procure vehicles directly from the manufacturer, and then those are brought in through local dealers for their fit up, and there is an advantage to those dealerships in Saskatchewan for the work that they do. And then certainly over time, the maintenance and service is quite an advantage to them as well. But this is a cost-effective way to go directly to the manufacturer, and with the 4 Western provinces, the volume that is needed ensures that those costs are as low as possible.
So this is under the New West Partnership, correct? That I think you referenced that in 2018 in committee, because you said the procurement, the New West Partnership that we have, we're able to procure vehicles at a lower rate. So I'm assuming that that's what you're referring to. In terms of the Saskatchewan dealers, like, were all 250 of these vehicles brought in from Saskatchewan dealers then, is what you're saying?
Yes, they're transported to the local dealers, and then we work through the local dealers. So they flow through, all 250 vehicles flowed through Saskatchewan dealers.
Just so I understand the process, then you purchase them from the manufacturer, and then the manufacturer ships them to Saskatchewan and drops them off at a lot somewhere that you would arrange, I assume, through RFPs. And what is the role of the dealer? Do they charge a normal fee that they would charge for any vehicle then on top of that? Or do you just pay them a lot fee for dropping it off? And just wondering what the advantage is for the dealers in this circumstance, because you're buying them directly from the manufacturer.
For the committee's information, there is a fit-up fee that is paid directly by the manufacturer to the dealers, and the dealerships get credit for the sale of those vehicles, which helps their business as well. And we are only notified once the the dealership has completed their fit up, and then we're able to pick them up in a ready-to-go state. So again, we're trying to balance the lowest cost possible and providing any incremental value that is put in to ensure that Saskatchewan companies are able to realize on that. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, the maintenance and service that they provide is quite an advantage for those dealerships as well.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to ship them to Ontario for maintenance. So in terms of if I went and bought a vehicle from a dealer, though, I would pay more and the dealer would make more money off me than he does off the government, right?
Well, I believe on volume pricing and stuff like that, that they're able to sharpen the pencil a little bit more. And if you and I to go in, we would probably be paying a little bit more.
One vehicle.
Like to share between us?
No, I'm not sharing with you.
Oh, no? I was interested.
I'm only buying one vehicle at a time.
Let the notes know that I was interested.
Nice try, Mr. Minister. Just moving on, what kind of emphasis is being placed on low or no emission or electric vehicles, and do you have a strategy around that?
For the committee's information, yes, we are, putting emphasis on hybrid vehicles, certainly because, we're able to operate them. We have a pilot vehicle that is an electric vehicle here in the city, and we anticipate that there will be more electrical vehicles purchased. And, it's encouraging to see. I don't know if the member's been at the co-op in Davidson, for example, they're moving in that direction as well. So I think the future is exciting as far as that goes, and we're going to be on top of it as well. We see that's the direction of the future here.
Thank you. I don't know if you've been out to the GTH, but where the office was, there are 7 electric vehicle plug-ins. So if you do have an EV and want to charge, you can go out to the GTH. Just going back on the dealership.
But the member is promoting the GTH.
There you go. I never thought that would be said, Mr. Minister.
Oh, wait till
Good one.
Mr. Miley tomorrow.
I know. Going back to the dealership and the maintenance contract, how do you determine which dealers get those maintenance contracts for your fleet?
So for the committee's information, a variety of repair shops are used, and there is, certainly they're across Saskatchewan. They're in different jurisdictions. We allow the user of the vehicle to choose where the closest and approved place is for maintenance and service. If it's something to do with warranty work, though, we insist that it goes back to the to the dealer where it was originally purchased through, and the work is done at those approved facilities.
I guess my question though was, how are those dealers chosen to begin with, the ones that you have the warranties with? Is there an RFP?
This information, the manufacturers choose the delivering dealer based on our request for, where we want the vehicles delivered and such. But our experience is it's a wide variety of dealers across the province that benefit from this.
All right, just moving on, time is quickly passing. Last week, I think June 14th, there was an announcement that the government's selling the executive air facilities at Regina International Airport, and I think bids closed on Monday, June 15th. But the catch is similar to Valley View, where the buildings must be moved or demolished. So was there a successful bid on those properties, and how much were they sold for?
Thank you very much. Member is correct that the bids closed, I believe, on the 15th of June, and we're just 10 or 11 days after that here. So they're reviewing the bids at this point in time, and taking it all under consideration. Nothing's been awarded yet.
Thank you. I do want some IT questions, and I feel bad because I have a lot, but I won't get to them all. I know that you were in PAC earlier this year in April with the auditor's report, and one of the things I think that your deputy minister indicated there is that you are working to automate some of the processes for August of this year. I'm just wondering if you could give us an update on that automation.
Officials are asking for a little bit of clarification in reference to exactly what was taking place at that PAC meeting. And as minister, I don't go to the PAC meetings, so
I apologize. I didn't ask a very clear question. The auditor was talking about the ministry needing to develop and maintain comprehensive procedures and guidelines to support the development and operation of secure web applications. There, I heard the penny dropped. Okay. So I guess it's in relation to secure web application. There was a web application where Central Service did not complete the security assessment until 8 weeks after it was put into use. And so I believe you indicated that you were working to automate some of those processes.
Thanks very much. I got an enthusiastic answer here. So the evaluation process has been undertaken. The secure web application, it's all been implemented as discussed, and there's an audit procedure that's in place to ensure that it's doing what it's supposed to do. So that's one area that looks like it's been done, and now we're just overseeing it and auditing it to make sure it's doing everything it's supposed to do.
One last. At that same meeting, you had indicated you were making progress on identifying higher risk web application vulnerabilities. And you indicated, I think it was Deputy Minister Carr, said that by March 31st of 2020, work is targeted to be completed to place all web-facing applications behind a web application firewall to enhance security. Were you able to achieve that work and get it done?
Yes, that's been achieved and is fully operational.
All right, thank you for, Mr. Chair, for your benevolence this evening, and I hope you enjoy your new Corvette. Yeah, I do have many more questions, but I am aware that our time has elapsed. So I want to thank the minister and officials for a productive discussion today. And it's my last time with Central Services. So just want to say shout out to the officials and all the good work that you do. It's much appreciated by the people. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may. I just want to respond to the member and thank her for well, these 2 hours and the number of years where we've had a chance to go back and forth together. And as I indicated earlier, I had a chance to be in opposition a number of years ago, and I know it's a lot of work, it's a lot of research, and I can tell by the types of questions that you ask that you have done your research, and I think you can be very proud of the job that you've done in estimates over the years. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Minister, and everyone for being here. We will now adjourn until, we will recess, excuse me. We will recess until 6 o'clock.